Thank you all for being awake this early, because I'm not awake at all.
Dude, if you're not awake, I'm just gonna go like full manic and I'm gonna be like, yes. Because this is a fun panel and there are certain parts I know about and I love this one.
So we're gonna go ahead and kick this off, because I'm sure someone at this con, if not in this room, knows what the very first anime brought over to the US was.
This is Ushicon, this isn't their first rodeo.
Wait.
We have to do this because it's a formality. It's like, does anyone know what the first TV anime brought to the US was?
No, not TV anime.
Oh, just anime?
Yes.
Oh.
So a lot of people think that the first anime brought over was a show called Speed Racer.
Here comes Speed Racer.
But that wasn't it.
Several years before Speed Racer, there was another show called Astro Boy. But that actually wasn't the first either. Astro Boy was the first television anime brought over. But in 1961, Toei Pictures released a couple of theatrical movies called Hakujaren and Shonen Sasuke, which were the first brought over to the US in June of 1961.
Now, one of the interesting things about Shonen Saratobi Sasuke, when they brought it over, they actually localized it very, very faithfully. They didn't change any of the names.
A lot closer to the original Japanese than we would have imagined for 1961, even though they had to change the title to Magic Boy, because in 1961 the US didn't know what a ninja was.
Little brother, what you saw was a witch. They say that years ago, when Japan was a bright new country, there was a wicked, jealous, greedy witch who wanted to take away all pleasure from the happy Japanese people. This witch cast magic spells over them and made them suffer. But there was a great Japanese king then who knew magic too, and he heard of the evil she was doing, and he came here to the forest where she was, and he punished her. He turned her into a little crawling salamander. The years went by. The good king who knew magic grew old and passed away. And the witch was able to change back into her former self. And now once again she brings suffering to the innocent. Her name is Yaksha, the evil princess.
Sister, I am going to learn magic. You'll see. I'll get rid of her.
Sasuke, you're only a little boy.
But still, sister, I must get rid of the witch.
Sasuke, I know how you feel. But wait. Won't you wait until you're a little older? Huh? Won't you?
So yeah, you can see the Disney just dripping off of that clip. You have the funny looking animals and everything. But the story remained intact a lot more than you would have expected in 1961. And both these films absolutely bombed. So
they decided, what if we make these movies more American? What if we change it up a bit?
So yeah, the disappointing performance was blamed on the films being too Asian to appeal to American audiences. So when Toei came out with its third film, an adaptation of Journey to the West, it got the full chop shop Americanized treatment we would come to expect for the next 35 years.
This movie is amazing.
They changed Sho Hakai's name to Sir Quigley Broken Bottom. Among many things. You'll see in this clip that we're about to show you that even with the what's his name?
Oh,
Sterling Holloway.
Yes, the guy who played Winnie the Pooh. He actually does the narration. And a lot of these people in this cast list were seen as like crazy famous at the time.
This would be like casting, I don't know, like
the Biebs.
Like Justin Bieber in a movie. It was that huge. And
it was a Disney Ghibli dub.
Right. And you'll see when you see this clip that they didn't even try.
Everyone who believes in magic has heard about Majutsu Land. It's a beautiful island floating in the sky somewhere near the coast of Japan. All the great magicians who have ever lived make Majutsu Land their home. Majutsu Land is ruled by His Majesty Supreme Wizard Extraordinary King Amo. His wife is Queen Amas. Naturally, they named their son Prince Amat. So, with Amo, Amas, and Amat running things, you can see that Majutsu Land was a wonderful and peaceful place to live.
You're just in time.
Aren't you glad to see me?
Oh, yes. What brings you here?
It's been such a long time since I saw you. I was lonesome and worried.
Is that all?
Never mind, now I find you alive and well, that's all that counts. Here's a present. Chestnuts, I remember how you loved them.
Oh, I've changed. Now I hate them.
There's this monster Sir Quigley who loves her. We can't do a thing to stop his marrying her.
A real monster?
Well, he's one of the McSnarl brothers again. You know Herman and Vernon McSnarl with his partner theirs. His name is Sir Quigley Broken Bottom. He stays with them at Cadaver Cabin. He's coming for her tonight.
Put on the light. Here comes the sight. Sir Quigley's getting married tonight. Hello, beautiful. Here I am. How about kissing the bride? Don't shy. I will eat you for my lunch, and a tasty morsel you'll be for me. I am Lurie Popo, and I welcome you to Castle No Homo.
You were so right. It does sound like Castle No Homo. Now, I know it's Castle No Hopo, but every time I hear that, I'm just like, Castle No Homo.
Little did they know in 1961 that in the future, people wouldn't get the Amo Amasaman joke, but Castle No Homo would be hilarious.
Somebody needs to put this movie into like a YouTube poop.
But yeah, this movie did even worse than the first two. And is still considered like one of the worst films ever released in the United States.
I guess anime movies, just no one likes anime movies.
So, Hollywood producers just figured, well, Americans must not like their Japanese cartoons, and there would not be another major theatrical release of an anime for over 30 years. Luckily, anime found a new home on television. Osamu Tezuka, godfather of anime,
He Astro Boy'd.
He Astro Boy'd, yes.
I mean, Astro Boy, it was revolutionary.
And it was brought over to the United States largely thanks to this guy, Fred Ladd. Now, Fred Ladd is a very polarizing figure. On one hand, if it weren't for him, anime probably would never have made it to the US when it did. On the other hand, if Fred Ladd had his way, all Japanese characters would have English names and be eating jelly donuts. He was a very strong proponent of Westernization. He actually started Americanizing German cartoons back during the 40s and the 50s. Astro Boy had to be significantly censored. They removed any instance of Japanese text. They removed a lot of cultural references. They removed a lot of content. There was an entire episode that was not shown in the US because it had a doctor operating on a dog, and that was considered too graphic for American audiences. And Tezuka hated what America did to his creation, got very, very, very angry, wrote a lot of nasty letters, and said he would never let any of his things be brought to the United States again. And then they gave him a whole bunch of money, and they brought over Kim the White Lion, among other things. Ladd worked with a company called Translux, which is still technically around. They haven't had anything to do with anime for like 30 or 40 years. Fred Ladd was the one who turned Tetsujin 28 into Gigantor, among many other things. And you have Lion King Zero, if you haven't seen King of the White Lion, yeah. And then Translux and Fred Ladd brought over a show that would come to define anime in the United States for many years afterwards.
Now, this show was absolutely massive in.
Now, the reason a lot of people think Speed Racer was the first anime brought over to the United States is because this is the first anime that really hit it big in syndication, and it really hit it big in marketing. There were Speed Racer toys, Speed Racer lunchboxes. This show remained on the air for a good 30, 35, almost 40 years in syndication.
I mean, it's so iconic, they made a Dexter's Lab episode about it.
And, you know, for up until, you know, the anime renaissance in the mid-90s, when you asked someone, you know, what was anime, they would immediately say it was Speed Racer. It was, you had this was the anime stereotype. You had the still frames with just the moving mouth. You had
lots of yelling.
And lots of yelling.
Let's talk about our next favorite company.
Okay, so you'll see me talk about these guys a lot. And there is a reason I bring these guys up. In 1970, there's a company founded called Leisure Concepts Incorporated, or LCI. Their job is marketing.
They got the rights to make the merchandise for a little indie sci-fi movie.
Yeah, and in 1977, they hit it big. They signed on for an unknown film called Star Wars.
And they made hella money.
So there's a reason I bring these guys up. They do have something to do with anime later. Now, in 1979, this is where you have the first kind of anime boom. The beginning of the 80s anime boom, which actually began in 79 with a show called Star Blazers.
Now, the thing about Star Blazers was that unlike Speed Racer, this was a show with a long, continuous narrative. And so if you missed an episode, you know, you wouldn't know what was going on.
Yeah, you had to watch the episodes in order. That kind of bothered a lot of the censors in the United States because they
had to cut stuff out.
You know, you have to cut things out in order to show things on American television, and they're like, well, if we cut this out, it becomes very plot important. So this show ran for 5 years, and in September of '84, it ended in '84, just in time for yet another cultural phenomenon.
From days of long ago, from uncharted regions of the universe, comes a legend. The legend of Voltron, defender of the universe. A mighty robot, loved by good, feared by evil. As Voltron's legend grew, peace settled across the galaxy. On planet Earth, a galaxy alliance was formed. Together with the good planets of the solar system, they maintained peace throughout the universe. Until a new horrible menace threatened the galaxy. Voltron was needed once more. This is the story of the super force of space explorers. Specially trained and sent by the Alliance to bring back Voltron, defender of the universe.
Voltron, defender of the universe.
That announcer guy sounds really familiar.
I think that's Peter Cullen.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like to me.
Yeah.
It's Peter Cullen and BJ Ward. She's the only female voice. She's also the voice of Smurfette.
I was actually, I just leaned over to Pathos during that clip and I'm like, is that Optimus Prime?
So, if you ever watch the show, you may notice that sometimes Voltron is made out of lions, and sometimes Voltron is made out of cars.
And that's because Voltron is made out of 2 anime.
So, yeah, there's 2 totally different and unrelated series. Beast King Go Lion and Armored Fleet Dyruger. World Events Productions chopped them up. They had to take a lot out. I think it's Go Lion in particular is very graphic for the time.
One of the reasons they did this, and I know I'm going to get the number wrong, is because for a cartoon to be syndicated, it had to have, I want to say 52 episodes. That was the minimum it could have. And since they didn't have enough material from Go Lion, you know, to fill this much, they just took 2 shows with very similar art styles and said, it's the same show.
It's all anime.
I mean, it all looks the same.
And even then, they only had enough material to run Voltron for 1 season.
It's actually more messed up how Go Line got into this. They sent a letter to Toei. They wanted to get Dairuger. It was not this Dairuger, but it was another Dairuger that involved 3 lions. So they said they wanted the anime with the lions. Toei didn't know what they were talking about, and so they said, we'll send them 100 Beast King Go Lion. And so they sent it, so it wasn't even the right one. But they started watching and they said universally, and here's the crazy thing, they did all the translation with no script. They didn't have the actual script, so they made the translation just by watching the Japanese in the raw and not being able to translate. So then they did Go Line, you're right, it wasn't long enough. Then they added in Dairuger, which was a conglomerate, I think a conglomeration of 2 other animes, I forget, the library has volume 3 of it. And then, but the Go Line portion of Voltron was actually so popular that they actually commissioned Toei to make a 3rd season of Voltron specifically for American audiences, where Lotor and Sven are still alive.
Yes, that's right, because, oh god, Sven.
I'm sorry, I had to throw it out there. This is how messed up and chopped up it was. They got the wrong anime from the get-go, but they ran with it.
That's honestly fantastic. One of the reasons I've been hyped to do this panel at Ushicon is because I know that, like, y'all are geniuses, and y'all can be like, I know shit about ADV, and it's that helps us a lot.
So in order to fix the whole we don't have enough material thing, for their next Chimera series, Harmony Gold chopped up 3 shows.
Now what they did with this is they actually said, since they did have different characters, that each of the shows is just like a different era in the same universe. It's like a time skip.
Yeah, so you have the Earth-Alien War, and then you have a time skip, then you have the Space War, and then you have a time skip, and it's supposed to be like several generations later, even though these series are totally, completely unrelated.
I still think that it's creative in its own very, very strange way.
And this was one of the first things that had Carl Maychek's fingerprints on it. Now, he's another important figure in anime history. He at least made some effort to retain the feel of the original, but because his translations were kind of awkward and corny, if you look back at them today, but that's just what cartoons were in the 80s. I mean, we just got done watching, He-Man and Gem, which were, of course, paragons of fantastic writing and brilliant voice acting.
I mean, that's the thing. A lot of scripts for kids shows were really, really corny, so really...
But this gave birth to the sub versus dub debate, and a lot of anime purists becoming vocal in their preference of Japanese audio with subtitles. And if you remember, this is VHS era, so you had to either buy the subtitles or you had to buy the dub.
And if I remember, weren't the dub VHSs actually a little bit cheaper?
I don't know.
No, yes. We saw a panel on Carl Maychek in Vegas, and apparently the dub ones were a little bit cheaper, so if you're broke, you go with the slightly messed up version.
Letters aren't cheap, and that's not the half of it. You have to import the audio all the way from Japan.
Yeah. Let's talk about Ghibli.
Let's talk about Ghibli, even though this is before Ghibli. June 13th, 1985. You have Nausicaa, one of Hayao Miyazaki's very first films, released in American theaters. Sort of.
Now, I love this poster because if you notice,
Nausicaa isn't really in the picture at all.
No, we have we have a dude with a gun, we have Skeletor, we have Perseus, I forget.
See, I don't remember Skeletor being in this movie.
Yes, that's right. And it's just like...
The shadow guy shows up at the end for 5 minutes.
Well, no, that's actually the shadow thing from that one horrible nightmare sequence. And they changed the names, they changed the plot. I believe Nausicaa is...
Princess Xandra.
Yes, Xandra. And they cut out a lot of the environmental stuff so that it's just more...
So instead of the monsters being, angry at human actions, the monsters are just mindless monsters trying to kill humans for no reason.
And as you can imagine, Miyazaki was pissed.
This almost directly led to Studio Ghibli's no-cuts policy, which was extremely successful at keeping Ghibli films out of the US for the next 8 years.
Yeah, Miyazaki, they basically said, if you want to license one of our shows, you can change the names, You can't cut anything out, and you need to keep the dialogue like a strict translation of the Japanese.
And during the era where cartoons were considered kid stuff, you know, the fact that you can't cut anything out of the movie, you know, they're like, no one's going to watch a PG-13 or R-rated cartoon. Of course not.
I mean, unless it's heavy metal.
True. Oh god.
So here we have a hippie. Okay, so this hippie lived in the mountains of California for a good 10 years or so, came down and was like, you know what, I bet that Americans would read manga if we translated it and brought it over.
The question is, was he smoking anything at the time? Just like, you know what, manga.
So he contacts Shogakukan Publishing, who just hands him $200,000 and says, you know what, that's a good idea. Start a manga importing company and you know, have fun with that. And Viz Media is born. That is Seiji Horiguchi, the founder of Viz Media. He lived in the mountains of California for several years, and now he's the father of one of the most influential anime and manga companies in America.
Now we get to come back to LCI.
So we keep talking about these guys for a reason. With interest in Star Wars dying down, LCI hops on to the next big thing, which is Nintendo. They were responsible for all Nintendo merchandise in the late 80s, early 90s, including the
cereal system.
Nintendo cereal system. Remember the McDonald's toys where you had the Goomba with the suction cup on it and you pushed it down and then you waited for the suction cup to let go and it would hop.
But we're going to get back to these guys in a little while.
We keep talking about them for a reason. We'll hear more about them later. In '88, Carl Manchek found Streamline Pictures, wanting to make an effort to stick to the original Japanese as much as possible. First company founded specifically for the anime industry. And in order to, what's the word I'm looking for?
I don't know what you're about to say, but he picked up another Ghibli film.
Yeah, in order to show what he planned to do with the company, the first film he produced the dub of was My Neighbor Totoro. Very completely faithful to the original, stick perfectly to Ghibli's no cuts policy, and no distributor would touch the film. Now here's the thing about. We see anime today where everything is done in-house. You have companies like Funimation, they acquire the license, they produce the dub, they market, they produce their own DVDs, they do everything themselves, but that's not how it used to be. It used to be one company would produce the dub and then shop it around to film companies and distributors and say, hey, do you want to take this film, advertise it, and put it in theaters? And everyone said no, because of course no one wants to watch this.
To be fair, nothing happens in Totoro, so...
Well, the thing about Totoro is Miyazaki said, I want to make a film where there's no conflict.
And it was seen as completely unmarketable.
What ended up is 5 years after the dub was produced, it was picked up by, of all people, Troma. So Troma is most well known for schlock horror films like Killer Condom.
And Toxic Avenger, and I want to say Surf Nazis Must Die.
I don't know if they ever did Surf Nazis Must Die.
That might have been, the Surf Nazis may have been
so if you ever got a chance to look at Troma's catalog in, you know, the mid to late 90s, they had, you know, Toxic Avenger, Sergeant Kabuki Man, Master Bader, My Neighbor Totoro.
And Cannibal the Musical.
And Cannibal the Musical, yes. And My Neighbor Totoro.
Oh, my favorite movies.
So they're like, okay, no one wants to distribute our shit. Let's try doing our own distribution. And they made Akira. The streamlined dub of Akira, which is kind of, you know, Geneon redid this in 2006, which is the Johnny on Bosch dub that a lot of folks today are more familiar with.
I still think the streamlined dub is okay.
The streamlined dub wasn't bad. So even, like I say up there, Streamline had zero marketing budget, which is why, you know, their movie poster looked like it was done in like GIMP.
But the crazy thing is, they showed it to people like, you know, George Lucas, who is a massive Japanophile, and he just looks at it and goes, no one's gonna buy this.
Seriously,
Akira? No.
I mean, if you know the level of Japanophile that George Lucas is, that he looked at Akira and said, no one in the United States will watch this show.
Which is crazy because it's goddamn Akira.
This is still the whole notion that cartoons are for kids. No one's going to watch a PG-13 or R-rated cartoon.
I remember Siskel and Ebert actually gave it 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, because it was good.
I mean, it's great. It's Akira, but the perceptions at the time was no one was going to want to watch this movie. So let's talk about another anime company, Right Stuff. So here's the deal with Right Stuff. It was founded as a telescope company. It was named after the 1985 astronaut movie. So after making a decent amount of money, the owner of the company, was like, hey, there's this new thing called home video. I wonder if my favorite childhood cartoon, Astro Boy, has ever been released on home video. And it hadn't. So he's like, you know what? I've got enough money. I'm going to license Astro Boy myself.
I think that is the god tier fanboy. Like, I want to watch this show. I'm going to license it.
So, and if you go on Right Stuff's website, it tells an epic story about his journey to get the. Now, it was easy enough to go to Japan and find the original,
The Tetsuwan Atom.
Tetsuwan Atom, but of course that wasn't the show he grew up watching. So he went to CBS and was like, hey, do you have the dub you made of this? And they're like, no, we destroyed it 3 years ago.
Why would we keep a hold of that garbage?
So he had to go to places like South Africa and just cobble the series together. And if you go on the website, it's an epic journey. The very first Right Stuff catalog contained only the first 4 volumes of Astro Boy, 2 episodes per VHS tape. It's the 90s. Who remembers back in the early 90s when GamePro and other gaming magazines had those dodgy black and white ads all over the last few pages? Like, play your imported video games.
Secret of Mana 3.
Gametronics was one of those. John Ledford founded a company to distribute chipped consoles. And of course, he's familiar with Japan-only video games. Led to more than a working knowledge of anime. Gametronics eventually branched out into that direction. But if you're talking about anime on television at the time, it was going to be really, really little kid stuff. And yeah, I watched all this.
Now, one of the interesting things about these shows is that I want to say at the end of the 80s, the Tokyo Zoo, they got in like some of the first koalas.
Oh yeah, Japan kind of went koala nuts for like the turn of the 90s decade. And you had 2 or 3 completely separate anime about koalas. You had adventuring koalas, then you had magic koalas. But the thing about little kids anime is you didn't really need to edit it. They wanted stuff that you could just take it, slap a dub on it, and put it on television because that's the bomb.
I never realized there was a Maya the Bee movie that came out a few years ago.
Yeah.
I was like, what? No way.
So John Ledford, owner of Gametronics, meets Matt Greenfield, and together they founded a company called AD Vision. In case anyone is wondering, AD stands for Animation Dubbing. The first anime that they picked to dub was a show called Devil Hunter Yoko. That came out in 1992. And then, ADV skyrocketed from there. Get ready for a blast from the past.
The idea behind Power Rangers was freaking genius.
You have Sentai from Japan, where the faces are totally covered, no need for lid flap matching, intercutting it with scenes of totally normal American 25-year-old teenagers, which is why the Yellow Ranger constantly changed gender. Because in Japan, the Yellow Ranger was a dude. Which is why sometimes when you're watching the show, the Yellow Ranger will suddenly shoot a foot taller and grow a package.
God, I want to make a hentai joke about that.
Which is the plot of several hentai. Okay.
Henshi. All right.
This is Gen Fukunaga, the founder of Funimation. Now, like I said before, Funimation was just the distributor at first. There were several dubs made of Dragon Ball Z, which were aimed at being shown on kids' television in the U.S., which is what you did at the time.
Now,
which is
one
why
thing,
they got butchered.
One thing we don't have a clip of here is if you go on YouTube, look up something called the Big Green Dove.
Okay, the ocean dub is the one we're probably most familiar with. That's the one that we saw on Toonami. Kid says that they showed the ocean dub in England all the way to the middle of the Cell Saga.
Yeah, they actually kept the ocean voice actors for a longer time.
But there was another dub made called, it was called the Big Green Dub because they changed Piccolo's name to Big Green.
And then instead of Saiyans, they call them Space Warriors.
There's in Malaysia, they produced their own bizarre English dub.
Well, it's Malaysian English, so it's a little odd.
So,
well, let's
the ocean dub, as terrible as we all look at it today, was probably the least terrible produced at the time. Speaking of terrible dubs, so Fred Ladd is running the show right off the bat, so everyone gets new names and occasionally new accents. Now here's the deal with Sailor Moon. There was a notion at the time that girls over the age of 10 never watched cartoons. So they focus tested Sailor Moons with girls 8 and under.
And the thing about this was, Fred Ladd actually wrote this in his book. When he showed it to like the really young, like 5 and 6-year-old kids, most of them were just completely confused by everything. You know, the transformation sequences, the Japanese food, just the effects. They had no idea what was going on. And so they said, you know, we probably can't dub Sailor Moon. What if we just remake it?
Wait for it. So, you know, we saw the deep, we eventually saw the deep cut of it. This is what they showed on Toonami. And they had to cut a lot of stuff out because, of course, they're aiming at children under 8. They cut out the blood, the nudity. You had things like delinquent behavior. You had where the episode where she uses the disguise pen to sneak into a nightclub, that got cut. The episode with the evil bunnies
because she has to kick the bunnies.
Because that was considered animal cruelty. But even as bad as the deep dub was, it still could have been much worse. So if that was your first exposure to the horror that was Saban Moon, I'm very sorry.
Now, I feel kind of bad right now because part of me, I want to like go to that universe, get the DVD box set, and then give that to Brett in the Bad Cartoons room so we can all get drunk and watch it.
Okay, so one pilot episode of this was produced, and apparently it was shown on television in Canada once.
Supposedly it's one of those things where, you know, it aired once at 3 a.m. and then never again.
So right off the bat, you have the 25-year-old teenagers, one of whom is in a wheelchair because every show in the 90s had to have one token character in a wheelchair.
Dude, her wheelchair has blue lasers
And then they miss the point completely and they make them all actual sailors.
They have those little
Sailing
wings
through space on windjammers. Apparently, the dialogue in this was, it's all about, you know, how math is hard and I'd rather be shopping for clothes.
Toon Makers actually leaked like some bits of a script like about a year ago, and it is amazing. But let's go back to LCI.
So compared to that, you know, the dick dub that we got wasn't so bad, and we all grew up with it in the 90s, So you may wonder why we keep talking about these guys. The reason we keep talking about these guys is because in 1995, LCI changed its name to 4Kids Entertainment.
Oh, dear, no.
Yes, every single piece of Nintendo merchandise you had as a child was brought to you by the most hated anime company in America.
Yay!
It also made one of the best captain theme songs in anime too.
Yep, we'll talk about that in a minute. But in 1997, the face of anime was about to change in America forever. That actually was the first broadcast of Toonami on March 17th, 1997.
Can I ask a dumb question?
What?
Why does Tom look like Moltar in that picture?
Tom, that is Moltar.
Oh.
Yeah, Tom didn't show up until later, much later, a couple years later. So Toonami was actually founded as, the idea was it was going to be a block of action cartoons. It started off with almost no anime whatsoever. They had Johnny Quest, Tronny Quest.
I love Tronny Quest. That was my jam as a kid.
You had Thundercats, which is not an anime. That was actually made by the same people who made the Frosty the Snowman cartoon we see every year.
Rankin Bass.
Rankin Bass. And then they pulled the 10-year-old dub of Voltron out of mothballs.
Defender of the Universe?
It just so happened that, you know, as time would go on, most of the action cartoons being produced were produced in Japan. If it wasn't on television, if you want to see anime that wasn't on TV, I hope you had very deep pockets. VHS tapes were expensive. It cost, like I said up there, about anywhere from $300 to $500 to watch the entire series of Evangelion when that came out in 1997.
I am so glad to be living in the era of save. And just like, here's Shiki, it's $15. Hell yes.
And then this happened.
Anyone ever look at the moon at night when it's full? I don't think so. Why?
They need the moon. Today at 5, Toonami busts out the heavy artillery. Us power will spare our chest. We stop. We get a butt to defend. Today at 5, only Toonami.
Beginning of an era.
DBZ!
If you were around my age, these were your first anime. And yes, dudes admit it, you watched Sailor Moon too. This became the starting point for hundreds of thousands of anime fans around the country, bringing anime to an unheard of audience. Anime exploded in 1998.
Now, if you're a little wee baby like me, then this next thing...
Or if you didn't have Cartoon Network,
this next thing was
then your first anime was probably this. I wanna be the very best. Like, no, come on everyone. To catch them is my real test. To train them is my cause. I will travel across the land, searching far and wide
understand the power that's inside. Gotta catch 'em all. I know it's my destiny. Oh, you're my best friend in the world we must defend. Pokemon, gotta catch 'em all. So true. Our courage is you teach me, and I'll teach you. Pokemon, gotta catch 'em all. Gotta catch 'em all. Pokemon.
Like Dude said back there, everyone loves to crap on 4Kids, but I defy you to find 10 people at this con who don't know that song.
What did you just ask me though?
Okay, where is it? Do I have? Do I have?
I don't know if you can
ability?
scan back.
I don't know if I can scan
Okay,
back.
that bit earlier though.
Hold on, let me see if I can.
No, I don't think
There we go.
I wanna be the our courage is all.
Okay, hold on.
So true.
Wait, go back a little more.
that is my wife,
Who
you
the
damn
hell
it.
is the girl on the skirt?
I noticed that.
Does anybody know?
Who the fuck is she?
I still headcanon that's like Gary's sister from the games who like gives you all that map and stuff. But let's talk about Pokemon.
So, 4Kids, like I said before, had the exclusive license to sell Nintendo shit. So when Nintendo wanted to bring the Pokemon anime over to the US, they're like, hey, we've got the licensing for that. And, that's how they got into anime to begin with.
Jelly donuts.
Jelly donuts. And then everyone stopped watching it when Brock left the show in favor of Tracy, even though Tracy was specifically created because the show was so big in America. The Japanese producers were worried that Brock looked too Asian.
So they're like, okay, in the second season, he goes away and we'll get a dumpy white guy in cargo shorts. I still like Tracy though.
I don't. Tracy is like the Raiden of the series.
Tracy is my waifu.
In the distant future, mankind has reached the stars, but the galaxy is troubled.
Peter Cullen again.
The Earthsphere Alliance rules the outlying colonies with an iron fist.
I'm sure God would understand the steps we're taking.
Resulting in about time, people realized the ones posing the most threat are none other than yourselves. We've had enough.
Those who oppose them,
We won't be needing you.
Someone pointed out the other day on Facebook that this is kind of a show about like 5 terrorists.
So,
throwing them out of a plane, he still shoots them. I'm like, just to be sure.
So in March of 2000, suddenly America realizes Gundam exists. Now here's the deal about Gundam Wing. This dub was not produced for American television. The dub was produced with the home video market in mind, meaning that they could, they didn't have to censor things. People could actually die and not get sent to another dimension.
We actually just replayed Final Fantasy VI the other day, and even in the most dramatic moments, you have like Kefka being like, "You're going to go.
You're going to disappear.
I'll put you to sleep."
So you have 5 boys named 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Are they the Jackson 5?
And then of course you have 6 too. You have Zex.
Oh yeah.
Being that this was shown on cable, they could get away with a lot less censorship. That was kind of the point. I'll kill you.
But let's talk about
Let's talk about DVD.
DVD.
Now, at the time, Laserdisc had just bombed horribly, and people were very, very wary of new formats and reluctant to buy new technology. The PlayStation 2, you were going to buy one of those anyway, and it came with a DVD player built in. This was my first DVD player, and I know it was probably a lot of y'all's first DVD player. So that led to DVD eventually taking over the home theater market. Thank you, Sony. Bundle deals. Let's talk about this for a minute. Pioneer wanted to redub Akira. So they go to Japan and say, hey, we want the license to Akira. Streamline is long defunct by now. We want to redub and produce another dub of Akira. And the Japanese said, okay, but if you want Akira, you also have to license 3x3 Eyes and Miffy.
Now this was actually common practice. It's almost like, were those little fish that like suck on the sharks? It was like, okay, if you want this really big, good thing, also license a couple shitty things.
So if you're ever wondering why so much shitty anime gets dubbed, this is why. Because for every Attack on Titan, Funimation also has to get shit like Defrag.
We without wings.
Hey, he probably wasn't good at anime. He probably wasn't good.
Anyway, 3, 2, 1, let's jam.
It's time to load this. Get the stuff together. Okay, 3, 2, let's jam.
All right, Adult Swim, a block specifically for adult cartoons. This was unheard of in the 80s when, children were the only ones who watched cartoons, of course. So Cowboy Bebop, all the anime that couldn't be shown during the day now had a place on TV. And even Shinichiro Watanabe himself has said he likes the dub better.
It's probably because of Steve Bloom's amazing voice.
I mean, all 4 of them are amazing. I mean, this is proof that you can do a good dub.
Well, to be fair, this is kind of a love letter to like American sci-fi and stuff, so it makes sense that he's like, that is a good dub.
And then, exactly 1 week after the debut of Cowboy Bebop, 9/11 happens. This is the first nail in Toonami's coffin, because Cartoon Network pulls anything even remotely war-themed, and Toonami becomes Samurai Jack, Transformers Armada, and Hamtaro.
Oh, never mind that they never show the Teddy Bomber episode of Cowboy Bebop ever again.
Right.
I mean, that's the thing, like, songs were taken off the radio because they might be too traumatizing. It was just, like, complete...
And so you have anime in America almost taking an immediate reactionary swing back to kids stuff, including shit like this.
Big bad boys from outer space. Body slam the human race. Wrestlers race to our defense. Strength and speed and flashes.
Okay, admittedly, if I had been 10 rather than 20 when this came out, I probably laughed my ass off at it.
Dude, I was like 10 when this came out, and I was like, it's like Dragon Ball Z.
See, with fart jokes.
Yay, my favorite things.
And then a week after this debuts, you have something slightly better coming out. Now, when Spirited Away came out in the US, Disney agreed to market it, dub it faithfully, but Studio Ghibli refused to let Disney put little plastic chiquitos and no faces in stores, so in retaliation, Disney refuses to market it, which is why it grossed less than $500,000 its opening weekend. ADV keeps riding the bubble. You get an anime channel that almost no cable providers pick up, and a magazine that almost nobody subscribed to.
Isn't that the one where they're like, you have to call, tell them Anime Network is good?
I mean, yeah, call your cable provider now and tell them you want Anime Network, and no one did that. More like non-anime. Tech TV starts Anime Unleashed. You have weird stuff, not mainstream enough for Toonami. Shows like Serial Experiments Lane and Better Man. Who remembers Better Man? Yeah, I watched that. Spirited Away wins the Oscar. Disney grudgingly re-releases it. Goes on to get $10 million, which is less than a fraction of what it got in Japan, and less than a fraction of what it could have gotten. Pioneer changes its name to Geneon in 2003. Now, here's the thing that anime companies are doing at the time. At the time, there is so much anime coming out, and all the companies are like, what's going to hit big? What's going to be the next Evangelion? What's going to be the next Pokemon? They have no idea, so they just license everything.
And then they hear that the guy who made Escaflowne is coming out with a new sci-fi show.
Okay, so that became Heat Yes, they paid almost $1.8 million to license Heat J.
They paid around the same amount that Funimation paid for Full Metal Alchemist.
Before a single episode aired in Japan. All Geneon knew about this show, they had this one piece of concept art, which is why the cover of each volume has this picture on it, and the fact that it was done by the Escaflowne guy. This will obviously sell a cajillion copies. Yeah, it did.
I will say, I kind of like it, but it is one of the notoriously worst-selling anime in history. Anime News Network picked it up for streaming a few years ago, and it was their least streamed show.
This played into the cycle where companies would throw money at the Japanese out of sheer hope. Then when it didn't sell, you'd have to buy 3 more shows to make up for it. The anime market became saturated. Stores would buy tons of anime, and they would, end up sending it all back because it just wouldn't sell as well as it thought. Second nail in Toonami's coffin: no more afternoon anime. ADV, in response to all this, tries to make its own anime.
Life in hell can be beautiful, daughter, if you let it. Desire equals power.
Okay, Carl Maychek wrote the screenplay, which explains a lot of things. And this looks like it was animated by the same people who did Saban. I'm sorry.
I can't.
September 18th, 2004. America, still reeling from the 3rd anniversary of 9/11, is visited by yet another tragedy.
Don't give it up, new baby. Don't give it up, sorry. Don't give it up now, baby. Don't give it up, give it up, give it up, give it up, give it up.
Okay, that's enough of that. Yes, I just compared the 4 Kids dub of One Piece to 9/11. Deal with it.
Yay, control!
Now here is the thing. No, One Piece debuted in Japan in 1999, the anime did. It doesn't show up in the US until 2004, and in time when companies were licensing everything. Now, why is that? No one wanted to touch this show. Simply because One Piece was a kids show that could not be shown in a kids time slot.
The thing about it is, trying to bring One Piece over to America, it's too colorful and goofy for like tough, badass teens, but it has too much boobs and murder for little children. And
4 Kids was actually almost tricked into licensing this. They went over to Japan to get more stuff for Foxbox, and and the Japanese were like, okay, you can have, season 4 of Ultimate Muscle, but you also have to license the show called One Piece. They had no idea what the show was when they got it.
It's a kids show. It's about pirates.
It's a kids show about pirates. That's all they were told. And so when they got it, they watched it and they're like, fuck, what are we gonna do with this? We can't show this. The Japanese were like, told them, do whatever it takes to get this show into a kid's time slot. And that's what they did. You had to remove all guns, you had to remove all tobacco, you have Captain Chaser and his steam fruit.
Okay, does that mean that Captain Smoker vapes in the 4 Kids dub?
Yes, Captain Smoker now vapes. But it becomes popular. Foxbox is renamed 4 Kids TV because it's so popular. Navara doesn't see the bubble bursting anytime soon and makes Gen Fukunaga very rich. The follow-up to Spirited Away is a disappointing release in theaters and loses to Wallace and Gromit for Best Animated Film that year. Anime Unleashed goes away in 2006. Crunchyroll starts as an illegal fan-sub streaming site in 2006. $5 a month and you can watch all the pirated anime you want in high definition. And if you think this didn't make a difference, just take a look at all the good series that came out in 2006 and 2007. You have iconic series like Haruhi and Lucky Star and Ouran, Death Note, Gurren Lagann. You have experimental shows like Deno Coil, Ergo Proxy. You have so much money pouring into the anime industry from the US. And in a time where, it took a year or so before you saw this stuff on DVD, when Haruhi came out on DVD, no one bought the DVD because everyone had seen it by then.
I mean, that's the thing. I remember being in
also,
high school.
Holy crap, Ouran High School is 10 years old now. Bidding Wars. So, who has heard of Corel Phantom Memory? Right. ADV paid almost $1 million for the show.
Because the idea was, when they were fighting to get what would be the next big anime, companies would just throw more and more money at the Japanese and see, who's going to pay the most for this, and you would get, really kind of middling shows that they paid insane amounts of money for.
And if you remember at the time, Gonzo was especially notorious for this. Anime that just kind of went off the rails and didn't really have an ending. That's because, the Japanese would get halfway through a show, an American company would throw $1 million at them, and they're like, well, what do we do now? It doesn't matter. We can just write whatever the fuck we want. And then the bubble bursts. Bam, Geneon shuts down. Bam, Anime Network shuts down. Bam, New Type USA shuts down. ADV desperately tries to stay afloat in 2008. Toonami goes off the air in 2008. See a space robot. Crunchyroll in 2009 decides it's made enough money from illegal activity to stop doing illegal activity. Thanks for paying us all this money for your fan subs.
Now we legit.
Bam, this was the big one. ADV shuts down in 2000. Oh, doesn't really shut down. It restructures itself.
Is it Matt Greenfield?
Yeah, Matt Greenfield said that this was like Voltron splitting apart and just becoming Lions again. So there are like 6 companies now that all used to be part of ADV, but it's still basically ADV. Funimation manages to survive. The Tokugawa Ieyasu of anime, largely because they stayed out of bidding wars. They didn't need to go into bidding wars. They had Full Metal Alchemist and Dragon Ball Z. So Brotherhood premieres on Adult Swim in 2010, kind of signaling, hopefully, that anime would return. Bam. How many of y'all knew that 4Kids filed for bankruptcy 4 years ago? Yeah, even 4Kids went under. Devar sells Funimation back for nearly $100 million less than they paid for it. Maybe that means the anime industry is kind of dropping in value. Bandai, no more paying late 90s VHS prices for a series, except for Aniplex. Now, Toonami reappears in 2012. Now, Late Saturday already had a fair amount of anime. They just called it Adult Swim. But of course, calling it Toonami made everyone warm and fuzzy. It's very much more adult in tone. DBZ fans are 10 years older now. It started off as a 3-hour block, and now I think it's down to a 2-hour block. And most of what ADV and Geneon had is now either owned by Funimation or so unmarketable that the license is in limbo. We now have licensed rescuers like Lucky Penny, which is owned by Right Stuff, and Discotheque Media, salvaging things like the dub of Ghost Stories.
If you've never heard of either of these companies, they've taken a lot of stuff like the Old Fist of the North Star, Lupin, Unico, Game Center CX, and they actually put this stuff back on DVD, and it's great to be able to get a copy of it again.
And maybe the anime industry isn't so invaluable after all. Investment Group paid $100 million for Crunchyroll at the end of 2013. And finally, last thing we're going to mention.
Well, we might mention like one quick thing after this.
Space Dandy. He's a dandy guy in space.
Now, why is Space Dandy important? The reason Space Dandy is important is because this was the first dub produced at the exact same time as the original Japanese. The English dubbed episodes, because of the time difference, ended up actually being released in the United States before Japan. And this is something that was absolutely unheard of.
Now, one thing, can we talk about broadcast dubs?
Yeah, what Funimation is doing now is something called broadcast dubs, where something is released in Japan and is actually dubbed and released in America for streaming a week or two later.
And then they kind of maybe slightly redo the dub a little bit.
Then if it turns out that, oh crap, we just recorded in a plot hole, they fix it for the DVD release. So now there is absolutely no excuse for piracy. Because you're getting your stuff now, and you're getting your dubs now, and you're getting your subs now.
You got your dubs now. Oh, what up?
What if the series is not available, like, anywhere?
When stuff isn't licensed at all, that's like, it's kind of a fuzzy area.
Okay, it used to be, okay, Greg Ayers, if you know him, is like one of the leading anti-piracy advocates in all of anime. And he used to say, grudgingly, okay, if it's not available anywhere else, then you can get it. But now if you ask him, he says, if it's not available anywhere else, then watch something else.
There's a lot of anime out there in the sea.
And I think that's all we got.
Does anyone want to say in the 2 minutes we have like 3 words about anime? I think we are out of anime facts. We love you guys. We hope you enjoy the rest of the convention.
Thank you for being up with us this early. We will be in one of these rooms in an hour for Akira Kurosawa if you want to chill with some classic 50s, 60s.
Yes.
And in this room?
And then we'll be doing True History of the Ninja.
After I take a nap.
Yes, and then 7, I believe, is Hot Dads of Anime. And then tomorrow we're doing Otomania, getting your friends into anime, and how to do panels and ruin your life. Thank you guys.